Hello and welcome to a sunny book nook. Today I have switched up the location. My desk is now in the background instead of my bookshelves, but I also have bookshelves over here. You can't really see them. And my artwork back there. So, change of location, just wanted to let you know. But anyways, today we are talking about all the books I read in the month of February. I did a mid-month wrap up for February because I was like, I need to do a quick update with my TBR situation. And so now I'm going to be talking about the second half of the month of February and all the books that I read then. If you haven't watched the first half of this video already, link in the cards. Also subscribe if you're not already. Typically, I read a lot of books per month. I try to aim for between 25 to 35 or 20 to 30 maybe. But this month I kind of failed because not only did I fail my TBR that I set at the beginning of the month, which you can watch up there and you can see the different books that I actually ended up not reading. And not only did I fail that TBR, I also failed my personal goals of reading 20 or more books this month. Or last month, because it's March now. Unfortunately, I only read 14 books in the month of February, but it's fine. It's fine. I'm going to... I've learned my lesson moving forward because I know now that I am really not good at sticking with strict TBRs that are supposed to expand for the entirety of the month. I set myself a TBR of 13 plus books, and the thing is that I can't force myself to read things that I'm not in the mood for, and that meant that I didn't get to quite a few of the books that were on my TBR. And the books that were on my TBR that I didn't finish, or that I started and I couldn't finish, or I didn't start, include, hold on, let me go grab them. Okay, so I know at the beginning of the month I said I was gonna read Trail of Lightning. That didn't happen. I didn't even start it. I know I said I was going to read 9 Bar Blues. I started it. I read the first couple stories, but I was not paying attention at all when I was reading it because I just wasn't in the mood to read this kind of writing, I suppose. And Conjure Women. This was also my TBR. Couldn't get to it. I got a little bit into it, but still, I wasn't in the mood to read a really slow historical fiction with elements of magical realism. Plus, it reminded me a lot of books that I've already read and that I've read quite recently. For example, The Prophets by Robert Jones Jr. It kind of reminds me of that, and because that book was so heavy, I feel like reading this not even less than a month after reading The Prophets was just... My book reading brain couldn't really quite handle it. And last minute I really wanted to finish Revolutionary Suicide by Huey P. Newton, one of the Black Panther Party founders. This is his autobiography. But I've been trying to read this for a year, and this is how far in I've gotten into it because nonfiction is hard sometimes to get through, but this is definitely a seminal piece of theory that once I finish and once I make a new list of nonfiction recs, it'll definitely be on it. I know it's gonna be good. It's just that I need to get through it and I need to sit my own ass down and get through it. So I know this wasn't on my original TBR, but these books were, and these are just a few of the books that weren't reached in my goal, but whatever. The past is in the past. Now it's time to get into the books that I did read in February. So I think we left off at Who Fears Death by Nnedi Okorafor in the last video. I think I already told you my thoughts on that one, but yeah, I gave that one 3 stars. Okay, moving on to the next book that I read in the month of February. I read Black Book by Matteo Escaripour. I rated it 4 stars. I really liked it. I thought it was good. But I liked it in a way of this was painful for me to read. And if you want a full extensive review on this, made a video on it. Link in the cards. Go check it out. I like this book. I think it's a really good satire. It's a really good Black comedy talking about how racial capitalism impacts people's mental health and their personal relationships and their perceptions on the world. It's really interesting, but very frustrating. The next book I read in the month of February was Do You Dream of Terra 2 by Temi O. And this book has just stayed in my mind. It stayed in my mind in a really particular way, in a way that's every time I can talk about it, I will. because I just want to talk about it so much. The concept is fascinating. Basically, there's these British teens who were like scattered out from a young age when they were like 13 or something to join the space program that would ultimately lead them to them competing to be one of the members of a team to colonize Terra 2. What's Terra 2, you ask? Well, it is literally Earth number 2. It's in a different solar system, and kids kind of just grew up thinking and like being taught and knowing that there's this other Earth. It's this better version of Earth because no human beings have touched it yet, but it's like the same in that, there's life on it, and there's greenery, and there's animals, and it's just a whole planet that hasn't been touched. So these kids have now finally graduated this really intensive space program and are now going to be launched into space. It's a group of like 5 or 6 kids, and all of these kids are pretty special, pretty intelligent. Obviously, you have to be in being in this program, and they're all pretty traumatized, to be honest, to be quite fair. And the events in this book are oftentimes quite traumatizing in the very beginning. Let's do some trigger warnings for suicide, sexual assault, abuse, lots of things. Lots of things are in this book because each of the different characters are very particular in how they are, and what they want to get out of this trip to Terra 2, which, by the way, they can never go back to Earth. It's a one-way trip from Earth to Terra 2. So they're never gonna come back. They're never gonna see their family again. The ride to this other planet takes like 40 years. So these people are gonna grow old on a ship together, and then once they get to the new planet, they're gonna have to settle and colonize it and wait for the other people on their home planet to come as later programs get developed by different governments around the world. And this book explores the concept of loneliness so deeply because obviously these kids are just in space, and it also deals with grief, loss, relationships, the complexities of power dynamics, and the sort of limited spatial element of the story makes it even more interesting, and the reflections of each of the characters on their own past and how they became who they were. It was so interesting for me to read about, and it's honestly just like one of the most perfect blends of literary fiction, like coming of age type stories, and sci-fi. Like, it was just so perfectly done and mixed together. Like, they are incorporated so well together, and those genres play off of each other beautifully. The reason why I rated this book 4 stars as opposed to 5, even though it, it's living in my noggin for quite a while. I mean, kind of similar to Black Buck. Both of these books are gonna live in my head for a bit. They both were also very frustrating to read because a lot of these characters are deeply unlikable and deeply flawed. And that's part of their character. That's part of their development. That's part of this message of the story. But sometimes the things that Harry in this book would do, I wanted to fight him so bad. At many points in this story. But I think that, like, the dynamics of race and gender and inclusion versus exclusion and, like, the stereotypes kids experience and teenagers and young adults experience in their interactions with each other, like, it was all just so well crafted, but so hard to read. So, yeah, I mean, it was a pretty slow build as well. Like, the pacing was sometimes off, but I can't really fault that to the author. It's just kind of the nature of the story, I feel. So, yeah, this is a pretty successful read in February. So here's when I slip up in my February reading. I wanted to honor Black History Month by reading an all-black TBR, but as you saw, I did not follow through on my TBR because I don't know. I'm bad at following through on things with really specific things about, like, reading what books, because like a very specific hard TBR with, like, a lot of books that, like, I need to read and I can't read anything else because it'll eat up time for me to that I should be using to read the other books, but I'm not in the mood to read those books. You know, it's a struggle. So unfortunately, I just decided to read the new Seanan McGuire Wayward Children series book instead. That's on me. I'm sorry. I broke a rule for my month of reading in February, but anyway, Across the Green Grass Fields by Seanan McGuire. This book was wonderful. I really enjoyed it. This series is a 4-star series for me, a 3.5 to 4-star series for me. But this book I really enjoyed. I love the world. I thought that how our main character's development and identity was treated by the author and crafted was so heartwarming and also frustrating in the way that growing up can feel sometimes, and growing up like socially conditioned as a girl, and then when you feel like you're kind of weird and you don't really fit in. Like, I thought that Shauna McGuire really captured that beautifully. This story is about a girl who stumbles upon a portal to another world where it's meadowy and grassy, and there's all of these hoofed creatures like centaurs and unicorns, etc., etc. I thought that also this book talked about the nature of like power dynamics and systems of power and politics in a way that was more nuanced and complex and interesting than the previous books leading up to this. Also, this series is not one you have to read in order. You can read any of the books in any order that you so choose, because the stories in this series are only loosely connected to each other through one sort of singular place of like the place where the kids who visit other portal lands come home to, and they have to readjust to living in normal Earth, the home for wayward children. Anyways, yeah, you don't have to read any of this in order, because each of the different books has a different set of world building, a different set of characters, etc. I think this one was probably my favorite book that I've read by Shauna McGuire so far, just because I think that it did explore themes of both identity and like systems and structures, and like created this really magical world that felt really immersive and fairy-like or whatever. I don't know. I like this book. I rated it 4 stars. And next up, I have yet another 4-star read. Wow, lots of very beautiful 4-star reads in the second half of February, I think. In the first half of February, I had a lot of 3 stars and I had 1 5-star. So I think this is an improvement because I'm reading more across the board really good books as opposed to like one really good book and other like more average books. And this book is a work of translated fiction. This book that I read was An Elderly Lady is Up to No Good by Helene Tursten. This was translated from German like years ago, I think. It was published originally in German, like I think sometime in the late 2000s, early 2010s, I believe. I'm not sure. But this book is kind of like a collection of short stories that are linked together by this old lady who lives in a flat that is kind of subsidized by the fact of some sort of like legal rule, and so she doesn't have to pay rent. You can just live in this nice flat, but the people around her, some of them are kind of sketchy, and it's about how she deals with these people, how she interacts with them, how she goes about her day-to-day life, and who she is and why she is like that. But it incorporates the elements of like murder mysteries from the perspective of the murderer, but you know that the murderer is like the protagonist and the good person. I don't know. I thought this was a really interesting way of formatting like a mystery story almost, and like I really enjoyed this book. I think it's really underhyped, and I think more people should read this, especially if you like mystery thrillers, because even though it's not particularly like, oh my gosh, why did this person get killed? It's more of like, oh, so that's how she gets away with killing this person. She's clearly an elderly lady who is up to no good, and she utilizes the fact that she is an elderly lady, and that because she is one, society and people treat her a certain way, and she uses that to her advantage in this really intelligent way that is just such like peak girl boss behavior, and so good. I love to see women commit crimes. Rated that book 4 stars. And finally, the last book I read in the month of February was When Life Gives You Mangoes by Karine Gedden. And this book is set in Jamaica, and it's a middle grade with elements of like magical realism almost. And this was so sweet. It was very stunning and sweet and adorable, but because it's a middle grade level book, I couldn't fully enjoy it to the extent that I wanted to. So I rated this book 3 stars, but I do think that for a middle grade audience, like if I read this when I was 12, if I gave this to someone who was like 9 to read, I feel like they would just love that. I feel like my younger self would love that. Any child would love this book. It explores themes of guilt and grief and the loss of a close friend. And it also describes this relationship to family and community and the feeling of being ostracized by community. It deals with it in this really beautiful way. And I really enjoyed this story. It's not really explicit, but there are some like sapphic LGBTQ undertones in this story, I do believe. If any of that sounds interesting to you, you definitely need to pick this up. I feel like Kayla from Books and Lala would really enjoy this book, so this is a particular recommendation for you, Miss Ma'am. I rated this book 3.5 stars. So those are all the books I read in the month of February, or the second half of the month of February. Let me know if you've read any of these books or if any of these books sound interesting to you in the comments down below. Also, my social media links are always down below. If you want to follow me on Goodreads in terms of seeing what I'm reading live, you can always do that. Again, this month was not a great reading month in terms of how much I read, but I do think I got to quite a few good books, and I'm proud of myself for that. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!